Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, January the 7th. And let me say hello to our good friend, George Rodriguez from South Texas. Happy New Year, George. Welcome to 2025. I have a feeling that it's going to be exciting. What do you think?
I think it's going to be very exciting.
Yes. Yes, I think so too. How was your New Year's celebration? Did they have fireworks down in San Antonio? They sure did.
Yes,
They sure did
as
up here.
usual, as
Yeah,
usual. But what was interesting was that they didn't have as many as in the past.
really.
By 12:15, 15 minutes after midnight, all the fireworks were over, which to me was okay, but it was unusual. I asked a police friend of mine, and he actually said that the cost of fireworks this year was really exorbitant.
Hmm.
And so people apparently bought a whole lot fewer um, fireworks than in the past, and it was kind of reflected in how quickly it was over.
Yeah, well, it's interesting here in Dallas, in downtown. They had a nice one. I don't know how long it lasted. Frankly, I didn't see it. I didn't see it live, I should say. But nevertheless, this is becoming more and more fashionable now for cities to try to outdo New York.
Yeah,
Uh, but the one thing about New York is that New York does have at least the benefit of getting the TV attention.
that's it.
And I've often wondered how many people, let's say in our time zone, actually are sitting there at 11 o'clock watching the ball drop in New York and wishing Happy New Year an hour early just because of the fact that it's in New York City. But anyway, a couple of things I wanted to get into today as we like to call this the Texas Report. We're going to talk about the speaker battle, and then I want to hear from you, the House Speaker here in Texas battle, not the one in Washington. That was settled fairly quickly on Friday. But and then I want to talk about deportations and what you're hearing. I know you had some people on your show, and you have some thoughts yourself. But I want to begin before we get to our two basic points. I have a post over at the American Thinker today. You can check it, americanthinker.com. It's on the right-hand side. And it's about this battle between the New York Times and the Mexican government. And just as a little background for the listeners and viewers who may not be familiar with the story, the New York Times wrote a pretty big story about a fentanyl plant in Mexico. They actually had reporters go down and go inside the plant and take pictures and videos of what was going on. And it has created, of course, a lot of controversy in Mexico. The most interesting thing about this plant is that it's in a residential area in the city of Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa, which is a state that has seen a lot of violence. And it's right there in the residential area. It's like, George, a couple of blocks from your home, there's a big plant manufacturing whatever. And so that caught a lot of people by surprise. It may have even caught the Mexican government by surprise because they came out really strongly criticizing the article, saying, well, that's not really a fentanyl plant. That's, I don't know what they were describing it, but it's just amazing, the information in the New York Times. And so far, no one has actually denied that the plant was there or that the people being photographed were actually working at the plant. But the Mexican government is reacting in a very sensitive way. So, what do you make of that, George? Why do you think the Mexican government reacted as sensitive as they did? I mean, they were really offended that a newspaper, particularly a foreign newspaper, would go down there and cover a story like that, George.
Well, Silvio, as we both know, I mean, Mexico has always pretended to govern when they really don't. While I lived down there, many people would say, that the government pretends to govern and we pretend to obey. And it was a clear situation where the New York Times caught them red-handed, did a story that is accurate, and the Mexican government is trying now to feign that they are innocent, that they are in shock. We have known for a long, long time that fentanyl production was going on in Mexico. We have known that. We have known the operation of the cartels. In Culhuacan, you had El Chapo and his sons, who are very, very strong. And if you recall, about four years ago, there was an attempt to arrest one of Chapo's sons, and all of the cartels came out and outgunned the military, the Mexican military, the government, and they backed off. And so we've known that this is this situation, particularly with production of fentanyl, has been going on. And then for them to act like they are innocent, like they don't know anything about it, they are in shock, and then turn around and be upset with the New York Times for exposing the facts. I mean, it's the height of hypocrisy in my
yeah. Well, I just thought it was interesting too, because Donald Trump had a press conference today, and he said that Mexico is run by cartels, and that is really going down like a nuclear bomb.
Oh gosh,
down there. I mean, I just happened to be checking on YouTube, just to see what they were podcasting from down there, and that was like a time bomb. That was like dropping a nuclear bomb there on Mexican territory.
But the fact of the matter is, how much influence do the cartels have? I mean, at Christmas time, there has been all sorts of activity along the border where the cartels have played Santa Claus and purchased all sorts of clothes and toys for the poor people that live along the border. Now, this Robin Hood behavior is not good because it's the cartels providing, instead of the government providing safety and allowing them to grow their own wealth. The cartels are taking care of them, and this is not good. This is not good.
Right. What was it during COVID? I remember a story during COVID when there was a shortage of hand lotion, the lotion for the hands, that you actually had the wives of the cartel members in Jeeps handing out hand lotion.
That's right.
Sanitizer lotion, whatever they call it, that you couldn't get at the stores. So how the cartels got it, I don't know. But you couldn't buy it at the stores, just like we had a shortage up here of it ourselves. You couldn't get it at the stores, but yet you had these ladies, handing things out to the family, saying, here's some towels, here's some hand sanitizer here. I think they were also handing out a mask.
If the cartels are delivering better than the government is, then the government has a real problem.
Right. And I think in some parts of Mexico, the distrust for the federal government is so high.
Exactly.
That, anybody can step in.
They're
and, like you say, and deliver better, then, they're going to. But I just thought it was fascinating how angry the Mexican government is with the New York Times. I mean, they're furious with the New York Times for having run this story. And it's interesting because they go through the article goes, I mean, the big question is, how did they get there? How did these reporters get to the plant? And the way they got to the plant was by negotiating with, I guess, the cartel regional leaders or whatever. And
public
also
relations directors of
that's right. Their PR department, I guess, who takes their media relations department, I guess. And it's just fascinating because the other day, my friend Alan Wall, I think you may have seen this, sent me an article that the cartels are the 5th largest employer in Mexico.
There you have it.
5th largest employer. Now, a lot of people say, well, how can that be? Well, it's not that difficult when you consider the amount of money that is being laundered. So it's not like, there is an HR department where they give you an ID card or a tag around your neck that says you work for the cartels. No, what it is just a bunch of companies that people work for that are being used to launder all this money. I mean, it's the oldest trick in the world, as they say. So, I mean, Trump saying today, after that New York Times article a couple of days ago, about the cartels. I mean, he has really, really rattled whatever the expression is. He's got them rattled down there. I mean, Trump is really, really. But here's the other thing, though. There are people who are saying we may not like the way he says things,
but he's saying the truth.
but he's telling the truth. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
so. And that I think some of that is true up here as well. People up here are saying these things as well. So it's just fascinating. I just wanted to put a little plug there for my article over at the New York at the American Thinker. And if anybody has a chance, go over there and check it out. Well, George, let's come to Texas for a second. There's a big battle for the Speaker of the House right now. And I guess just for purposes of information, when does the Speaker vote take place, George? What is it later this month, or when is there a formal vote for Speaker here in Texas?
My understanding is that it will be later this month.
Okay.
That there will be when the session begins, when the session is called to order, when the new, like in the federal system, the new elected House members and senators, state senators need to be sworn in. There needs to be the swearing in, and I'm not sure if that's happened yet. Mm-hmm. I believe that did happen on the first.
Okay.
There were several officials that were sworn in, like the judiciary body, and so now the new House and the new Senate needs to be seated, and once that happens, then they begin immediately to vote on the new Speaker, and just like in the federal election, it's wide open and everybody votes, and of course, Republicans try to keep the Republican vote to themselves so that they can vote a Republican in. The Democrats, of course, try to convince Republicans to vote with them so that they might be able to get a Democrat in, and everybody tries to push their own candidate and their own agenda. So it'll be very, very interesting how this all plays out, particularly since we have so many more Republicans now than we do. It's not a margin, it's not a small margin of Republicans over Democrats. It's a pretty large one. So in some cases, in some ways, Republicans don't need Democrats to vote with them to win the speakership.
I think that last point you made is very interesting, because a lot of people don't realize how much redder, how much more Republican Texas has become.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of concern after 2018 when you had the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon, that somehow that was the turning point, that Texas would start going blue or even purple. Yeah, you're right. But that did not happen. The Beto O'Rourke phenomenon was a one-hit wonder, really, because even later when he ran against Governor Abbott, he lost pretty badly.
The fact of the matter was that he was such a poor candidate, and that seems to be lost on Democrats as they keep pushing poor candidates. I mean, Kamala. I mean, the coattails that Kamala should have had never materialized. On the contrary, we're ready because Trump had deep and long coattails.
Right.
So,
when you look at the Trump victory here, I think it was 14 or 15 points. I mean, you have to go back really to George W. Bush.
Yeah.
In 2004 or 2000.
And then you have to see where it reached. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It reached South Texas deeply.
That's the interesting part. That, I mean, I've mentioned this to several friends who don't live here, that Starr County in South Texas, Starr County, you know it well, sort of goes from San Antonio to Laredo. It doesn't, I don't think it includes those two cities, but it's all the territory in between, right? Yeah. Those cities. And I mean, that's about as Mexican American a county as you will find in the whole country.
Over 90%.
Yeah. And amazingly, it moved something like 17 points toward Trump.
That's right.
Incredible, incredible. And I hear that in other counties that happened as well. So it's
And the flipping
fascinating.
continues. There are now Democrats that have flipped after
Right.
the election.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
so it
Which
continues.
which makes your point about more Republicans in the legislature than now. Now the Senate, I guess, has stayed about the same, and that's because of the way those districts are drawn up. But still, this was I think, a huge victory for the Republicans here in Texas. So whatever magic they had from the Beto O'Rourke experience of 2018, I think they've lost it. That's gone now. There really isn't any. And you wonder about Beto O'Rourke, and I don't want to get off on him too much, but you wonder about his future. Because I think he made a huge mistake when he ran for president. I think that was bad timing. And I even think it may have been even a bigger mistake to run against Governor Abbott, who's a pretty popular guy.
Right.
And to run the campaign that he ran, which is basically, I'm going to take your AR-15 away, a more liberal campaign. They continue to misread Texas. I think these Democrats,
do they
really do.
Which is fine with me.
Yeah, which is fine with me. They keep losing. We're happy about that. By the way, just one more point about Texas and Republicans. You now have two states that in 2018 were clearly, let's say, moving toward purple, that have now gone back to red: Florida and Texas.
Yeah.
What I hear about Florida is that the Democrats they're not even in the game. That's how bad they are.
Yeah, really.
In Florida. I mean, they're not even in the game. And you look at Texas and you wonder who could be, let's say, the next Democrat running for governor, who could win.
Yeah,
I don't see any. I don't see any.
What Democrat in the horizon in local politics could rise? Because the Castros can't. The Castros have burned their own bridges here locally. You have Gutierrez, who has been really, really loud about the Uvalde shooting and embraced gun and opposed gun ownership. Has embraced abortions. Really, really moved himself, to the far left, and the counties that he was hoping would go with him in his own district are counties that went red.
Right, Uvalde, right? Uvalde County went red, right?
He won because there was no Republican opponent.
Oh, okay. No, but I mean for the presidency.
Yes,
it went red.
More people, and I need to look it up, but I was told that more people voted for Trump than for him in his own districts.
I wouldn't be surprised. If you remember when Governor Abbott beat Beto O'Rourke in 2022, he carried Uvalde County.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is Uvalde County, for some of the listeners who may not know what we mean. Uvalde County is the county where the city of Uvalde is in. And this is the place where that terrible school shooting happened, that the Democrats exploited so much.
And they poured in a ton of money. They poured
sure
in
did.
A ton of people came in there, and even now they continue to demand money for the victims and continue to and parade the victims, and so on. And it hasn't worked. It
hasn't, because I think people are smarter than that.
Yeah.
People are not going to blame a gun because an 18-year-old kid was growing up in a messed up home without parental supervision. They're not going to blame a gun.
Dressed as a woman.
That's right. And then on top of that, the door to the school was open. I mean, if the door is open to a school, my goodness, you've lost the battle right there. Because once the person comes into the school with a gun, it's really a bad situation. You're cutting your losses at that point. So you got to keep these people outside the school. You got to keep them from entering the school. And
correct.
Unfortunately, in Uvalde, that didn't happen. Let me go to another point. Deportations. I know you had Mr. Holman on your show in San Antonio, and I know you have had a lot of relationships with him over the years. Give me your sense. I know it has not been officially published yet, but give me your sense of what the deportation plan is going to look like. What do you think is going to be, what's the plan going to look like? Give me your best sense of it.
Well, in speaking to him directly, and in following everything that he's been saying lately. The number one priority is um, criminal aliens. That's the number one. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. Here in San Antonio, it is estimated that there are about 200 in the county jail who are criminal aliens. Now, one of the problems that continues to happen is that local jurisdictions refuse to acknowledge that citizenship, as they put it. But the fact of the matter is that these people are undocumented criminals. The other connection is the issue of terrorists. Here in San Antonio, we have the situation where a terrorist, somebody on the terrorist watch list, was arrested twice. They were arrested coming into the border in San Diego, but released. They came to San Antonio because there's a very large resettlement of Afghans here in San Antonio. He got into a fender bender here, no license, no ID. He was arrested again, turned over to ICE, but because, and this is the thing that blows me away on this whole issue with terrorists, is that unless they are caught in the act of an actual terrorist attack, they are just released. They are just released. They are not put into a deportation situation. So again, this person was released, and they were arrested a third time in New York. Now, how many people like that do we have across the country? According to ICE data, they have counted at least over 250 of them. Wow. That they have identified. So, I mean, it's not only the criminals, not only the situation of kids being killed, like the one in Houston, or the woman that was jogging that was killed in Georgia. It's these people who are laying in wait. I mean, we have in Chicago a situation where a Jewish man on his way to on Saturday on his way to the synagogue was killed by somebody that crossed the border illegally. Those are the people that Tom has spoken about. Secondary people are going to be the folks who are working illegally, and that's going to be more of a situation where the employers are found guilty, wanted, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that's happening constantly is a lot of discussion about, a lot of talk about that there's going to be mass roundups and that kind of stuff. No, there is going to be deportations. And when we talk mass deportations, it's because there's been so many people that have crossed, that have come across.
Well, let me just fine tune a bit what you're saying. I just want to make sure I understand one part that you said. When you're talking about criminals, what is the definition of a criminal? Is it somebody who's, let's say, violent, let's say engaged in violence, or would somebody who is trafficking people, would he also be a criminal? Because I think he is.
It's both. It's both.
Okay. All right. So then
it's going to be, I mean, people who are trafficking people, who are trafficking drugs,
right, as
well as somebody who commits a violent act here in San
Antonio. Okay, so that's what I mean. See, that's what I like about the approach, because the whole idea is we're going to be going after gangs. Okay, yeah, you can do that, but to me, the real crime being committed here is this trafficking of people, trafficking of children, the drugs, obviously, the cartel operations and stuff like that. That to me is the real threat.
Oh yeah, if you break federal law, if you break local law, you broke a law. Period. If you are breaking laws, then you are going to be deported. That's all there is.
Yeah, you're going to be. That's a good thing. Now, another potential deportation is someone who already has a letter from a judge who said, dear sir, dear madam,
right,
you don't qualify. You don't qualify usually
and
for
they
political
ignore it.
asylum.
See, now
They
that's another.
ignore the
They
letter,
ignore
and
the
then
letter,
they're
and
walking around us when there's a letter somewhere, and nobody's paying attention to that letter. Nobody's enforcing that letter. That, George, I understand.
yeah,
Maybe you have better information than I do, but I
that
understand
is that
there.
is that is exactly when we talk about uh, criminal aliens in the sense that they have broken a law,
Right. So
whether
these are soft criminals in the sense that they're not out
exactly
there robbing anybody, but they're among us
they're
and
ignoring immigration law.
ignoring the judge. That's right. And there's 1.4 million of them. That's the last statistic I saw, George.
That's yeah, it's a huge number. It is a huge number. And again, these are people that registered themselves, that came
Right.
across and said, I'm asking for asylum or I'm asking for this, and they were given a date and then they ignored it.
Right.
Uh, there
Yeah,
are
they
millions.
actually, I mean, if I may just jump in for a second,
Yeah,
these people actually were given full due process.
exactly.
My guess is that they were represented by an immigration attorney, and they went through the system, and the judge and the court said, well, no, you don't qualify.
That's right.
And you normally, I don't know, they give them 90 days to leave the country. I don't know what the procedure is. But I think that's another target, because that is not only a violation of federal law, but it's a disregard
It's disregard. And
of
then
the
there's those
judge.
those that crossed that didn't register, that are just here, that just came across, and that's the end of it. And we don't know who they were. We don't know how many there were or where they went.
Right.
And who have no. I mean, those that avoided any contact are usually people who have been prior identified for a crime in the United States, went across and came back again, came
Right.
back in.
Now,
So
another thing I believe that Trump is going to do, this may be a little bit more than Mr. Holman's work, but I think another thing that Trump is going to do is close the border. And he may, I should say, follow the example of Texas, because I think Texas has done a really good job on the border. Governor Abbott has done a great job. I mean, it is almost impossible to come into Texas unless you come in through one of the bridges or one of the legal entries. But
right.
if you just walk in, as used to happen before, people just walk in, they're going to be arrested and turned over to ICE. And I
Correct.
think the word has gotten around that Texas is not a good destination because they seem to be going elsewhere, George.
Exactly. And Tom Homan has made the comment that Texas is a great example. He wants to use Texas as an example of how the states can back up the federal government in protecting the border. For example, in Kenny County, the sheriff there, and Kenny County is basically maybe 2,000 people in a huge area, almost the size of Rhode Island. And they've had to have troopers from Oklahoma and Louisiana come in and back them up. But now what's happening is that they are arresting people for trespassing. And what they do when they arrest a person for trespassing, unlawful trespassing, they turn them over to ICE. That is a local law that was broken. Then it's coupled with the fact that they entered without proper documentation, and they are candidates for deportation immediately.
Right. And so I think that's going to be the approach. And I agree with you. I think there's been this dramatic presentation that you're going to have troops, coming down the rope from helicopters, arresting people. And that's nonsense. I think
No,
that
once
the
people
people,
and we've seen the shift. We've seen that fewer people were crossing in Texas than they have in California and in Arizona, and we've got to assume that is because they've gotten the message
oh,
that
sure.
crossing into Texas is not a good idea.
No, I mean, because if you want to get in legally, or if you want to follow the legal process, you got to go through a bridge or through these points of entry, as they call them. But there you're going to have to explain why you're coming.
Yep.
Or you have to at least identify yourself. And that is well, I guess 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly 2 weeks or 13 days. We're going to have a new president. And can you explain to me, George, in a short time we have left, what in the world was Joe Biden thinking when he released 11 people from Guantanamo here in the last week or so, in the last few days? They're being released. These are some pretty bad people, I
Yeah.
understand. They're being released or being sent to Oman. I don't know what they're going to do there. My guess is that maybe they're going to be coaching Little League soccer, George. Maybe
Yeah, I'm
that's
sure.
it. Oman contacted the White House and said, we have a lot of kids who want to play soccer, and we're missing a few soccer coaches. And you've got a bunch of men there in Guantanamo who have coaching experience. So why don't you send them to us? Why in the world? Here's what irritates me about it. First of all, it's a national security breach, because I guarantee you, George, we're going to find some of these people in the battle zone sometime in the future. They're not going to go. They're not going to start selling insurance or going into accounting when they go back to Oman. But here's the other thing too, and that is, this is how. Why don't they just close Guantanamo? They've been talking about it. Obama made the big deal about it against McCain in 2008, if you remember. And he came in, one of the first things he did was to sign an executive order to close Guantanamo. He never did, because he realized how stupid it was. And now you've got Biden trying to close Guantanamo without closing it. So why not just come out and say, we're going to close Guantanamo, and do it, let's say, in the middle of the presidential campaign. Don't do it 2 weeks before you leave the White House, when there are no political consequences, George. That's the part that bothers me.
It was obvious. It's obvious to me that it's political revenge. That's why they released him. That's why he also banned the drilling on U.S. On U.S. soil. When was it? On last week that he?
Yeah, that's right. A couple of days ago, he did that.
Banned it. I mean, he has taken some actions that are just outrageous, but it's all political revenge. What he is doing is he's thumbing his nose at Trump as Trump comes in, and the media runs with it and says, well, it's going to be very, very difficult for Trump to reverse this or to reverse that. No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that's going to happen is going to be very difficult to catch these people again, in the case of the terrorists, but that he is doing it for the best interest of the American people, definitely not.
And again, if he thought that protecting the environment was such an important responsibility, why didn't he shut down this production last year?
Yeah.
I mean, why wait until 2 weeks before you're leaving?
Exactly.
I guess the good news is if he does it by executive order, or if he did it by executive order, he can get reversed right away. I think I heard that it may be a bit more complicated than that.
There will be legal charges.
Well, that's
there will be legal challenges to it, because the environmentalists will say, well, it was put in place by the president, and so therefore it must be honored.
Right.
And it's going to cause some legal headaches, but the fact is that Trump can reverse it, and that's the end of it.
Well, and the challenges can go the other way, in the sense that they can say the president doesn't have the authority to do that. So it'll probably end up in the courts, like you say. But I do remember, George, one last thought here. I do remember one time we released one of these wonderful people in Guantanamo, and then we ended up arresting him again.
That's right.
A battle in Afghanistan or somewhere else.
Right. That's right.
And that, I mean, you got to explain that one to the parents of these young men who are there in Afghanistan fighting.
Right.
And then, all of a sudden they capture this guy, and it turns out that he was in Guantanamo 2 years before or whatever. So, I mean, that really annoys me. I'll just put it that way. It annoys me that he's doing something like that. Well, George, we're supposed to have a winter storm watch in the next 48 hours, which usually means a little snow for us. What's it like down there?
It is very cold. It's the bright sunshine, but it's very, very cold.
All right.
We're supposed to have hard freeze the next 2 nights. I and my nephew were going to go to Fort Worth to watch BYU and TCU play basketball on Saturday, but we've been told not to come because it's going to be snowy and icy and just the end of the world as we know it.
Well, I don't know if it's the end of the world as we know it, but I-35 can be pretty ugly when you have bad weather.
Yeah.
So I-35 is congested, and I mean, they never stop construction, as you know,
Yes.
on I-35. But I mean, I think you're better off. Is there any way you can watch it on TV?
Oh, well, we're going to watch it on TV. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that might be a more fun experience there with your nephew.
It's going to be cold for the next 4 or 5 days here.
Here's what I would suggest on Saturday night. Order some of those wonderful tamales that they have in San Antonio. Order some of those wonderful tamales that your specialty of the city of San Antonio. Those tamales, and maybe some of those wonderful chips and salsa that you can have there in San Antonio, and get yourself something to drink and watch the game.
Yeah.
And then you can laugh at all the people here in the Metroplex who are in the streets with their cars, who are fighting the snow. But I don't know. They always, these storm watch are always, but 90% of it is exaggeration because it never happens exactly or as bad as they say. But every once in a while, the prediction is correct. And one of the best things you can do if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is to stay home when there's snow. That's all I can tell you. Stay home. If there's snow out there, hey, get yourself let's do a video the night of the snow, and then we can kill time that way rather than than out there driving. Well, George, have a great weekend.
Thank you
very much. Have a great
much.
week, and good luck to BYU.
Thank you very much.
They did well in the bowl game, didn't they?
They did well in the bowl game.
Yeah,
they're doing good in basketball, but the Big 12 is tough. The Big 12,
it is tough. But have a great week, and we'll do it again next week.
You got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our good friend George Rodriguez. We always do this Texas report, usually once a week, every 2 weeks, and we talk about what's going on down there. And of interest right now, of course, here in our political situation is what is going to happen with the Speaker of the Texas House. There is a bit of a challenge within the Republican Party. You have a couple of groups who want to control the party. And it appears that a Mr. Cooks, Representative Cooks from North Texas, who has the support of the governor, the support of the attorney general, and I think the support of the lieutenant governor, it appears that he's got the inside track to win that position. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it is going to be Mr. Cooks by everything that I hear. And one thing we've learned about Governor Abbott, Attorney General Paxton, but Governor Abbott in particular, who I deeply admire because I think he's doing a great job running Texas. One thing I really like about him is that he knows how to play politics. He knows how to play the political game. And if you remember a year ago when he tried to do the vouchers, he couldn't get about 15 Republicans to go along in the House. And these Republicans were closely tied to the school districts in their communities, their districts. So what did Governor Abbott do? He put together a group of opponents to these Republicans. He put them in the primary, and he defeated practically all of them. Now, these were pretty red districts, so the Republican was going to win. And that way, he was able to eliminate about 7 or 8, perhaps even 9 of the Republicans who didn't support vouchers. So now he's in a pretty good situation where he's getting at vouchers, and he's going to get vouchers from the new Republican legislature. So that shows me that Governor Abbott knows how to play politics, and he's got a great deal of influence because he's a pretty popular governor. He's a pretty popular governor here in Texas. Whether he runs for a 4th term, I don't know. I don't know that part. We'll leave that for the future, but he's definitely doing a great job at the moment. Well, this is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thank you so much for listening. Our thanks to our friend George, and as I said, there's a storm watch coming on Thursday. So whatever you got to do, make sure you buy gasoline and buy some milk, whatever you got to do before Thursday, because it may be tough to drive around here Thursday and Friday. Thank you very much. Have a great day. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.